Imagine waking up every morning in a jungle. The air is thick and hot. Insects are everywhere. You have almost no food. You sleep on the ground. And every single day, you are ready to fight. Now imagine doing that for 29 years, not because you wanted to, but because no one told you the war was over. This is the true story of Hiroo Onoda, a Japanese soldier who kept fighting World War II until 1974. The world had already moved on. Cities had been rebuilt, children had grown up, men had walked on the moon, but deep inside a jungle in the Philippines, one man was still waiting for orders. The year was 1944. World War II was still raging across the world. Japan was fighting against the United States and its allies. The situation for Japan was becoming desperate. But the Japanese military never showed weakness. Never. Hiroo Onoda was 22 years old. He was intelligent, disciplined, and deeply loyal to his country. He had trained as an intelligence officer, a soldier whose job is not just to fight, but to gather information, think carefully, and survive in difficult conditions. His commanders chose him for a very special mission. He was sent to a small island in the Philippines called Lubang Island. His orders were simple, but absolute. You will conduct guerrilla warfare. You will gather information. You will never surrender. And you will wait until I personally return with new orders. Those words, "until I personally return," would define the next 3 decades of his life. August 15, 1945. On that day, Japan surrendered. The emperor himself made a radio broadcast to the Japanese people. The war was over. Celebrations broke out around the world. But on Lubang Island, deep in the jungle, Hiroo Onoda heard nothing. He had no radio he trusted. He was completely isolated, cut off from the outside world. The jungle had become his entire universe. A few weeks later, something strange happened. Papers began falling from the sky. Leaflets, dropped from airplanes, floated down through the trees and landed in the mud around him. He picked one up and read it carefully. The war is over. Japan has surrendered. All soldiers are ordered to come out of hiding. Onoda stared at the paper for a long time. Then he put it down. A trick, he thought. Enemy propaganda. This is exactly what they want me to believe. He had been trained to expect psychological warfare, the enemy trying to break his spirit with lies. This, he was certain, was one of those lies. He crumpled the leaflet and went back to his post. The years passed. One by one, his fellow soldiers gave up. Some were captured, some were killed in small skirmishes. Some simply walked out of the jungle, exhausted and broken, and accepted the truth. By the early 1950s, Hiroo Onoda was completely alone. One man, one rifle, one mission, in a jungle that the rest of the world had completely forgotten about. He was not lazy, he was not confused. Every single day he was active, disciplined, and purposeful. He moved through the jungle carefully. He studied the terrain, he attacked supply lines, he avoided capture. He survived on bananas, coconuts, and whatever he could find or steal from local farms. The local farmers feared him. They called him a ghost. The Philippine government sent search parties to find him. They broadcast messages through loudspeakers mounted on jeeps driving through the jungle roads. "Onoda, the war is over. Come out. You are free." He heard those voices, and every time he thought the same thing. Another trick, another lie. I will not be fooled. In 1959, the Japanese government did something heartbreaking. They officially declared Hiroo Onoda dead. His family held a funeral. His name was added to memorials. The world mourned him as a fallen hero. But the man they were mourning was still alive, still moving through the jungle, still believing in a war that had ended 14 years earlier. His family refused to fully accept it. They traveled to the Philippines. They hired people to go into the jungle with megaphones. His own mother's voice echoed through the trees, calling his name. "Hiroo, please come home. The war is over. We miss you. Please come home." He heard her voice. He recognized it, but he did not come out. Because she was not his commanding officer. She could not give him orders, and until someone with official authority told him to stop, he would not stop. This was not madness. This was not stupidity. This was something much more painful. Absolute loyalty, taken to its furthest possible point. Time moved on. The world changed dramatically. The 1960s brought rock and roll, the space race, and massive social change. The 1970s arrived. Japan had become one of the most economically powerful countries in the world. The very cities that had been bombed in World War II were now modern, gleaming, and alive. And still, on Lubang Island, one man waited. By 1974, Hiroo Onoda was 52 years old. He had spent more of his life in that jungle than outside of it, and then, unexpectedly, everything changed because of one young man. His name was Norio Suzuki. He was a Japanese adventurer, a young, free-spirited man who loved exploration and wild challenges. His friends thought he was a little crazy. He had announced that he was going to travel the world looking for three things: Hiroo Onoda, a panda, and the abominable snowman, in that order. Most people laughed. Norio Suzuki went to Lubang Island anyway. He didn't come with a government team. He didn't come with soldiers or loudspeakers. He walked into the jungle alone, with a backpack, and he simply started looking. And after several days of searching, he found him. Hiroo Onoda stepped out from behind the trees, rifle in hand, eyes sharp and alert after decades of survival. The two men looked at each other. Suzuki was calm. He didn't run. He didn't reach for a weapon. He simply said, "Onoda-san, I have been looking for you. Japan is at peace. The world wants you to come home." Onoda looked at him carefully. He believed that this young man believed what he was saying, but belief was not enough. "I cannot stop," Onoda said quietly. "Not until my commanding officer orders me to." Suzuki nodded. He understood. He went back to Japan. What Norio Suzuki did next was remarkable. He went directly to the Japanese government and told them what Onoda had said. He explained that this man, this loyal, isolated, exhausted man, would never come out unless his commander came to him personally. The government searched for Major Yoshimi Taniguchi, Onoda's original commanding officer from 1944. They found him. He was no longer a soldier. He was no longer young. He was an old man, quietly running a small bookshop in Japan. He had lived an ordinary, peaceful life for 30 years. When he heard about Onoda, he agreed immediately. He put on his old military uniform, the same one he had worn in 1944. He traveled to the Philippines. He walked into the jungle. On March 9, 1974, Major Taniguchi stood in a small clearing in the jungle of Lubang Island. Hiroo Onoda stood before him, thin, weathered, but standing perfectly straight. A soldier to the very end. Taniguchi opened a document and read aloud in a formal military voice. "In accordance with the Imperial Japanese Army's orders, all combat activity is hereby ceased. All soldiers are ordered to cease military operations and come out immediately." Silence. The jungle was completely quiet. Hiroo Onoda stood still for a long moment. Then, slowly, he unslung his rifle from his shoulder. He held it carefully in both hands, and he set it down on the ground. It was over. After 29 years, 3 months, and several days, the war was finally over for Hiroo Onoda. He wept. The world reacted with astonishment and deep emotion. He was flown back to Japan, where enormous crowds gathered to see him. He was not punished. He was not mocked. He was treated as a hero, a man of extraordinary loyalty, discipline, and strength. But Onoda himself struggled deeply. He had missed everything: his youth, his family growing older, 30 years of ordinary life, birthdays, meals, laughter, rest. He gave an interview shortly after returning. A journalist asked him, "Do you regret it?" He paused for a very long time before answering. "I did what I believed was right," he said. "I followed my orders. I cannot regret being loyal. But I am sorry for the pain I caused to others." He eventually moved to Brazil, where he started a cattle farm and built a quiet, productive life, far from the jungle and far from the cameras. Years later, he returned to Japan and opened a school, a survival school for young people, where he taught not weapons or warfare, but resilience, discipline, self-reliance, and respect for nature. The man who had spent 29 years surviving alone in a jungle used everything he had learned to help the next generation grow stronger. He lived until 2014. He was 91 years old. Final vocabulary review. Before we finish, let's review all the key words from today's story. Isolated, completely alone, separated from the world. Years of isolation had made him deeply self-sufficient. Surrender, to stop fighting and accept defeat. He refused to surrender without official orders. Propaganda, false or misleading information used to influence beliefs. He dismissed every leaflet as enemy propaganda. Disciplined, having strict self-control and following a strong routine, his disciplined mindset kept him alive for nearly 3 decades. Terrain, the physical features of land, he knew the jungle terrain better than any map could show. Resilience, the ability to recover from difficulty and keep going. His greatest quality was not strength, it was resilience. Loyalty, deep faithfulness to a person, cause, or belief. His loyalty was total, and it cost him 30 years of his life. Hiroo, Onoda's story is not just a war story, it is a story about belief, about the power of the instructions we carry inside us, about how the stories we tell ourselves can shape and sometimes imprison our entire lives. He was not a fool, he was not weak. He was a man who believed completely in something and had the extraordinary strength to act on that belief, alone, for 30 years. The question his story leaves us with is quiet but important. What beliefs are you carrying that may no longer be true? Thank you for listening. Keep learning, keep growing, and we'll see you in the next story.